Welcome to the Getting Into Good Trouble podcast, where we make it our mission to challenge, question, and inspire you to do the same. My name is Dylan.
I'm Libby.
And I'm Micah.
In this episode, we will be talking about anti-Semitism in London.
Wait, what is anti-Semitism, Dylan?
It's a great question, Micah. Anti-Semitism is hostility to or hatred against Jewish people. Anti-Semitism is all around the world, but today we will be focusing on areas of London.
In London, Jewish people are facing anti-Semitism and are being badly treated, and people are making them think that they aren't welcome and have been brutally harmed and abused.
These anti-Semitic people also draw graffiti symbols of hatred on public streets and the homes of Jewish people. This is a serious problem that is happening right now. We're going to be interviewing people who have experienced this hatred and asking them their stories about anti-Semitic behavior in London.
Who are we interviewing today, Micah?
Today we're going to be interviewing Moshe Bar Levi.
Who is Moshe Bar Levi, Micah?
Well, Dylan, he is a Jewish person that lives on the outskirts of London in a primarily Jewish community.
Looks like you have the image that London is a very anti-Semitic, very hostile place for Jews. But what do you base that notion?
I would say like the news and the media that's been going around and like protests that has happened.
Okay, we need to make a distinction between anti-Semitism and the protest. I mean, specifically, recently, since the October the 7th, 2024, there have been a lot of pro-Palestinian demonstrations. Now, I say pro-Palestinian. Anyone in Israel, anyone here also, I would say, I'm Israeli really, but I've lived in London for many years. They say, oh, these are pro-Hamas, pro-terrorist demonstrations. There is something in it, but it's not really the full picture. I live in an area that's very Jewish, and I have to say there is really virtually nothing to report. London, as far as I can, from my own experience, is a very safe, very pleasant place to be. England, Britain, Europe have changed. It's not what people would have seen if they came to visit, say, 30, 40 years ago. It's changed radically, and it's very multicultural now.
I went to Spain maybe a couple months ago, and in like the alleys there are swastikas just like graffitied on. Is that in London too, or not so much?
You may be able to see that occasionally, but I would say very rarely, and it's usually an act of hateful individual rather than some movement that is hostile to Jews. Jews are very, very safe in England generally, and I can be more specific about London. It really is. The picture that you get is, I don't know, it seems to be biased for no particular reason other than to keep our own hostility towards the Palestinians, which is not really what we are. We are not really hostile towards them. We are hostile towards terrorists who commit atrocious acts. So yeah, very little to report. I've been talking, and what I've been saying is nothing.
So you're saying that in London it's more pro against that. So you're saying that the protests are more about the acts of what Hamas did to Israel?
Not exactly. Throughout, I've been going to most of the pro-Israel and pro-humanity protests. Every Saturday in central London, there have been massive rallies and demonstrations pro-Palestinian. Now, they've been policed very carefully and very strictly, and certain text is illegal to show. Certain symbols like flags of Hamas or Hezbollah it's illegal to display. Certain words and calls are not permitted. The whole thing is policed as best as they can, but you're talking about demonstrations that were at times 100,000 people. Really huge level of attendance. And our demonstrations were very downbeat, maybe one or two that were big, but usually at best a couple of hundred up to 1,000 people on a good day, and all very civilized, and no hate speech at all. But there were also always a police presence for our safety. Whereas with the pro-Palestinian demonstrations, it was really to protect mostly people who were trying to disrupt it, or any signs of hatred from the demonstrators.
Yeah, I got a question. So, in the past, in 2023, there was 1,000 more anti-Semitic accidents reported by the Metropolitan Police. Have there been anything that they have done to try decrease that in the coming years?
The areas where there are a big concentration of Jewish community, there is more police presence. You know that the police here is very different to the police in America, but they are an authority and they are respected and they are obeyed. I don't know about those statistics, and I don't really know who reports them. I think they may be slightly exaggerated. Like I said, I looked at the recent months of reporting in the Jewish media, which will obviously, I assume, they would say something, and absolutely nothing in everything, anything to do with like local news and local events. It's just this guy met that guy, but nothing significant is that. There have been cases.
Yeah, that's interesting from our perspective because when we search up like anti-Semitism in London, a lot of different things come up saying how there's been like uprise of hatred in London. And coming from someone that lives there, and you're saying that that's not true, it's very interesting how American media.
I won't say not true, but it's wildly inaccurate.
Yeah.
There may have been isolated incidents, somebody defacing or trying to remove
Right.
posters of the hostages in Gaza. There have been cases like that, but I mean, I go sometimes to like a Jewish-owned cafe in the area to meet with some friends for breakfast, because we are all retired and we can do that. And on the building across the street, somebody put like hundreds of posters, like an A4 size posters of the hostages. And the only damage that those posters suffered is from like the elements, from rain and in sun. On like bridges for pedestrians, across major roads, people went and hanged like hundreds of yellow ribbons. Do you know the yellow ribbon element that we are using now and nobody touches it. Really, if anything, it gives us a good feeling of safety, really. And to put food on the table, take the children to school and back. They're not an element in that. The vast majority of people who go to those huge pro-Palestinian like demonstrations, people who English or British or from Europe and from other countries, but they are, I suppose, well-meaning but misguided or naive, and the vast majority of those, I would say, don't support Hamas, but they support the Palestinians, and there is a distinction between them. There's no real hostility.
Yeah. So you're saying instead of the fact that the news is saying, so the way that the news is putting it is that there's these rallies and there's like pro-Palestinian people being hostile. But instead of that, it is just these families that are pro-Palestine, but they aren't doing hateful or harmful acts towards Jewish people.
No, not really. I was in one a couple of weeks ago. There was a tiny little demonstration in central London to mark the second birthday of Kfir Bibas. Do you know who Kfir Bibas is?
No.
Kfir Bibas is the youngest of the hostages. His big brother, who is only a year older than him, I mean, they were kidnapped on the 7th of October when Kfir was 9 months old. So he celebrated his first birthday and now his second birthday at the hands of Hamas. And his mother and his father are also hostages. And of course, nobody knows if they're even alive, let alone what condition are they together. We don't know a thing. And clearly Hamas are holding, it's really such a vicious situation where Hamas are holding on to people who are obviously vulnerable and are using them to extort more of Israel. So I went to this demonstration, which was to celebrate a very poignant, very sad celebration of his birthday. It was really to mark it, and also some three or four hostages were due to be released the next day on the Saturday. It's now nearly 2 weeks ago. It was a very small demonstration, but it was right in front of the headquarters of, I think, Save the Children UK. So as we were talking, there was someone on the stage speaking. One person, possibly with a friend or two, walked past behind, and they were shouting "Free Palestine." And so we shouted back, "Shame on you!" And the police immediately were on him, took him aside, and I don't know what came of it. I don't think he was arrested. He was probably being cautioned and then told to basically go away.
Do you think any of
Like, especially American media that's been like biased
Really?
towards anything. Really.
It's wildly exaggerated, and I mean, I don't know of a single incident. And I watch. Ever since it all started, I became a news freak. So I can't get away from it. And no, not really. And if in large cities this is a situation, in smaller communities, who's got the time to do this?
Yeah.
Right.
I would say it's the image that people perceive, and it's, in my opinion, I could be wrong, but in my opinion, but bring
Thank you.
umbrellas.
Thank
Well,
you
it
so
was
much.
nice meeting you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
You too.
So, guys, that was Moshe Bar Levy from London with his thoughts on the anti-Semitism happening in London right now. So, guys, what do y'all think about that interview?
I think it's not what we were expecting.
Yeah.
I mean, he talked about a lot how there's not too much anti-Semitism going on in his neighborhood, partly because it's a mainly Jewish neighborhood. And
So, which makes me wonder, like, is it just downtown or?
most likely the protests are happening downtown, so probably the majority of anti-Semitism is happening in downtown.
Yeah, I say we could break it down from like protests happening about pro-Palestine and also anti-Semitism, because from his point of view, it sounds like anti-Semitism isn't a real big thing. It more so is just a passive thing that happens there.
Or
But
like the two worlds like collided.
Yeah, the real problem that has been reported is pro-Israel and pro-Palestine protests, and pro-Palestine people are interfering in those pro-Israel protests, sharing their opinions, making it seem like anti-Semitism.
And I would say it's not too much of hate crimes happening as he explained it. It's more of peaceful protests that people are just sharing their ideas on the topic, not too much about hate crimes, hurting the Jews, destroying their shops, their homes, nothing like that that I heard from the interview.
However, he doesn't live directly inside the city of London. He lives on the outskirts. So I wonder if we hear from anybody inside of the city of London, if they have any different experiences or have seen that anti-Semitism inside the city of London is a lot more noticeable than if you live in a majorly Jewish community outside of London.
Yeah, and also, I don't think the government's really doing a lot about it, in my opinion, because if it's been going on for like 4 years, then they're hoping that it's gonna die out.
23.
London.
And also, the media probably made it a lot bigger than it seems to get more views.
Especially American media.
Yeah.
Our Americans.
And I'd say that since from our interview, we've learned that most of the people that could be doing this are just people trying to feed their families. So it doesn't make much sense for people to just outright be hating on a certain demographic of people. Hey guys, thank you so much for listening to another episode of Getting in Good Trouble podcast. Today we talked about anti-Semitism.
But make sure to also listen to the other great episodes on getting into good trouble. Again, we are your hosts, Micah Bain
And Libby Snowden.
And have a wonderful day.
See ya.